What's up, people? Welcome back on the channel. I'm glad you're around, and we have some banger news coming in. A new whistleblower that appeared on Reddit with crazy claims, right? It's from the Eridani humans, that had like an experiment going on this world, which we are in right now at the moment. An incoming insectoid species, that is on the way to approach Earth. Scalar-phase weapons that are already being distributed, which is of course insane, and imminent managed disclosure in the coming years. We're gonna go into it. I'm just gonna read the whole Reddit post, afterwards gonna summarize the whole thing a little bit, and then I try to grab some things out of that text and talk a little bit about it. So if you feel like sticking around and you're interested, definitely leave a like, click the subscribe button. We're gonna start. So, you wanted disclosure, you get disclosure. I am a whistleblower, recently retired from the inside, and you're only getting part of the truth. Hi, so I heard you all want disclosure. Alright, hope you have time for this, because there's a lot. Grab a coffee or maybe get comfy with a pillow somewhere. I've been watching the news and hearing a lot of things now to be true, shockingly being talked about openly by some higher-ups in a documentary, so I figured, what the hell. You can call me Ria, not my real name obviously, but it will do. A little bit about me. I spent about 8 years in the military to pay for college, and then another decade plus in a part of the U.S. intelligence component that does not officially exist. On paper, I worked for a boring sounding office in a department most people have never heard of. In reality though, it was a compartment inside a compartment where the odd stuff of a certain nature got routed. My actual speciality is electro-optics, lasers, sensors, imagine systems, the math and hardware behind how we detect things at a distance. And in some cases put energy on them. That is what I trained in, what I did most of my serious work on once I was off the deployment treadmill. So when I say I know something about directed energy weapons and weird sensors turning, that's not I heard this from a friend of a friend. That was my day job. So most of my career was boring, in the way dangerous jobs are boring. Long days in windowless rooms, Iraq and Afghanistan in the early years doing the usual mix of SIGINT and Hammond support. Phone records, pattern of life workups. Building targets, packets on people who would never know my name but might notice a drone overhead later. After I got out of the uniform, I slid over to contractor work, then got pulled into the department government side. So, for a long time, my world was very normal. Counter-terrorism, sanctions, evasions, shady cargo going through weird ports, stuff like that. After that, foreign missile tests and what you have probably seen described publicly as space domain awareness, basically watching dots move around the sky and trying to decide whose dots they were and what they were doing. The weird part started when I was detailed to a small interagency working group looking at what was called anomalous aerospace and undersea system. Translation: things detected and showing up on sensors that did not match any known platform, did not behave like clutter, and did not go away when you changed radar modes or swapped optical systems. I was there because I understood both sides of the equation, the physics of the sensors and the intelligence context. You get taught very quickly to treat anything unexplained as a glitch, a calibration issue, operator errors, software artifacts, anything that keeps your world tidy. You get used to hearing weird glitch as a catch-all. Expect after a while you notice some of those glitches kept showing up across different systems, different countries, decades apart, same behaviors, same basic locations, same signature that never quite fits. So at some point you either admit there's a real pattern or you drive yourself crazy trying to not see it. If you're useful and you start asking the wrong questions for long enough, someone eventually pulls you aside, takes you to a skiff, takes your phone, has you sign your life away again, and shows you the next layer of the onion. This onion goes so deep, I thought that even after years of briefing, I've been exposed to anything below a few layers. Even still, most of this is purposely kept off NIPR and JWICS and is done in person. That is where I learned about most of what you're interested in here and what seems to be bubbling to the surface in the news lately. that when I learned about what we call the Council, yes, aliens, and I suspect you're not likely to see a lot of what I know mentioned even by some who know it who have begun speaking out for reasons I'll get into later. I've never met them face to face. Everything I know about them is from briefings, documents, and one secret video session that I honestly wish I had skipped. But it lines up with too many independent data points to just shrug off as somebody's pet theory. The basic story is that Earth was noticed roughly 2 billion years ago, long before anything walked around on land, not because we're special, but because we tripped a sensor, or rather life tripped their sensor. You see, the Council is not a single species. It is a collective of several advanced interstellar, maybe even interdimensional civilizations that run long-term surveys of stars and planets the way we run spy satellites, right? So huge distributed arrays of instruments working together, watching thousands of star systems at once for millions of years at a time. Their gear probably makes the James Webb telescope look like a kid's backyard telescope. So about 2 billion years ago, those instruments picked up biosignatures here, chemical fingerprints in the atmospheres that meant something was alive here. Atmospheric composition like free oxygen, methane, spectral fingerprints, chemical, disequilibria that screams there's metabolism happening down there. You know, the basics. At that point, Earth went into database as interesting, revisit later. So standard procedure for them when a world looks promising is pretty boring from their point of view. They send automated probes, not big crude ships like you see in sci-fi movies, just small, tough, very smart machines. Those probes come in, mostly targeted the oceans, and set up self-replicating facilities on the seafloor. Those facilities use local materials to build more facilities, right? So more probes, craft that can operate underwater, in the air, in near space, and eventually avatars that can interact with whatever life evolves. These biological or rather biomechanical avatars are what some people who claim to have been abducted have likely experienced, though they do have what we would call ASI. These beings are not gods, they are technology and they aren't perfect. They make mistakes, glitch out, etc. The reason they base all of that underwater for a simple reason. The bottom of an ocean does not care about ice ages, right? So political empires, climate swings or wars, temperatures and pressures change slowly over what long periods of time. It's a fairly stable environment and for much of human history has been mostly inaccessible. Speaking of time, we Earth humans tend to think in terms of nothing longer than the current human lifespan. And when pondering non-human intelligence, we like to think in terms of deep space, distance, and light years, but we seldom consider the lifespan concept of time for a post-biological species could be quite different than ours. Only our most astute thinkers in the realms of geology, paleontology, and cosmology think in terms of millions or billions of years. Geologic epochs, cosmological history, that is child's play for the Council, which has a different concept of time, more concerned with deep time, millions of years at a stretch. As such, their infrastructure is designed for that. So yes, a lot of the TMOs, transmedium objects, and impossible acceleration you have heard about are just their hardware doing its job. Maintenance, observation, sampling, nothing heroic. The warp bubble, Alcubierre effect was probably mastered by them before our solar system even existed. It's old tech for them, kinda like the wheel is for us. Also know, we are not the center of anyone's universe. There are about 1 billion planets in our galaxy that are more or less like Earth. Some just have microbes, some have more complex life. A smaller subset of those have or once had civilizations. We are just one more entry, a fairly recent one in cosmological terms, in a very large survey. Once early humans started doing interesting things, we moved from planet with life to planet with potential. So they have watched the same story unfold in slightly different ways around 1,000 times from what I understand. So chemistry leads to biology, biology creates technology. Tool, use, language, agriculture, cities, industry, energy, space travel. Somewhere in there you always hit the same fork, right? So either the species figures out how not to blow itself to pieces with energy densities it increasingly has access to, such as nuclear fission, nuclear fusion, antimatter, and more exotic matter energy, or it wipes itself out. So our situation worried them. We are a little paradox, extremely good at cooperating and also extremely good at organized violence. So our aggression stood out. Cooperation plus violence isn't unique, but we are very, very good at both. And once you get to those things like nuclear power, that combo tends to end very, very badly. So they'd seen plenty of variations of that play out over the last few billion years. About 10,000 years ago, our trajectory towards that became clear, and there was a major argument inside the council about what, if anything, to do with us. One side said the odds favored self-destruction once we discovered and weaponized atomic-level technologies. The other side, though, argued we were worth saving, or at least worth understanding better. The compromise was an experiment on which has ramifications as to why all of this has been hidden for so long. Roughly 65,000 humans were removed from Earth and relocated to what is basically a preserve on a planet around the star you know as 82 Eridani. Internally, we called those people Erids. That star is in our catalogs if you feel like looking it up, but the details of the target planet are not public for obvious reasons. The Erids were started in a kind of controlled paradise. Their world has a large dispenser system that can produce whatever basic material needs they have. Food, clothing, tools, right? Building materials, entire structures for habitation. Think Star Trek, replicators scaled up and wired into the environment. In that setup, nobody starves. Nobody's homeless in the way we understand it. Nobody spends their life chasing money just to meet needs. This was just the Erids' natural reality. The point from the council view was to remove material scarcity from the equation and see what humans do and achieve when they're not spending most of their energy bashing each other over the head over resources. Meanwhile, the rest of us stayed here on the control planet, dealing with scarcity, ownership, money, hoarding, and the rise of socio-political systems based on scarcity. All of the things that define Earth civilization. The results, according to what we were briefed, is that the Erids are now around 5,000 years ahead of us technologically, averaged out. Same species, same basic biology, same starting point, completely different trajectory because of conditions, nature versus nurture on a cosmic scale. For most of their history, they Erids thought they were native to that world. They only found out the truth roughly a century ago in our time. They learned that they were uplifted, that their ancestors were taken from Earth, that they have cousins here. Once they knew that some of them started coming back to visit the original branch. This is where their history intersect the sum of the UFO stories you know. The aliens that look almost exactly human are just that. I gotta say though, that the way he's writing with a lot of mistakes, I would say, is kind of weird, to be honest, man, because in a way he sounds native English, but sometimes it seems to be like in a translated text or something. I just get that feeling because it feels kind of unnatural, the mistakes he's doing in this text. But anyways, they are not hybrids, not clones, not secretly angels or demons. They are Erids, born around another star, showing up here after being given 10,000 years head start. They have in some cases met with leaders of certain countries and at least 2 UN Secretary Generals, both deceased. Now we get to why this has been buried for 80 some years. So you have to think like a senior US official in the 1940s and 50s. World War II has just ended. The Cold War is starting. Everything is viewed through capitalism versus communism. Then someone puts a briefing in front of you that says, in essence, there's a group of humans living on another world who have no money, no private ownership in the way we structure it, automatic systems that meet their basic needs. And in that environment, they advance thousands of years faster than we have. The man who built what we now call the Legacy program in the US, that sounded less like interesting anthropological data and more like a walking, talking advertisement for space communism. It looked like proof that communism works better than the system they were trying to defend. That and the ramifications of what could happen if that ever got out terrified them more than the existence of aliens did. Though, to be fair, they plenty had their worldview rocketed by the latter of the two. So the core of the cover-up was never just being aliens or even their technologies. It has been the systemic implications, the idea that scarcity and ownership are not hard-coded into reality, that they are one possible way to run a society and maybe not the optimal one, that was seen as an existential political threat in the 1940s and 1950s, and some of the people who grew up in that mindset are still steering parts of the program today. Now add in the famous crash retrieval incidents, Roswell 47, Kecksburg 65, a handful of other retrievals around the US and around the world. What we were told is that most of those were not accidents, they were tests and gifts. The Council, with Erid input, allowed certain craft and systems to fall into human hands in a controlled way. Enough intact technology that a very motivated and capable society could learn from it. Not enough that it will instantly rewrite everything. In fact, the Kecksburg landing, it wasn't called a crash internally. It was a direct result of a meeting and gift agreement made at Holloman AFB the year prior. The idea was to see who did what with it. Who could figure it out? Who kept it secret? Who tried to share? Who tried to weaponize it? Who panicked? Based on those results, the plan was to pick one primary human partner to act as the main interface for full council contact and to begin a managed process of reunifying Earth humans with the Erids and introducing us to the wider community. You can argue whether that is a good way to do it. I'm just telling you that is the framework I saw laid out. In the 1980s and 90s, during a brief period of when the Cold War ended, there was a push to finally disclose much of this. This was initially proposed meeting between the US, President Ronald Reagan, and the Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev at a summit in Reykjavik, Iceland in 1986. Also discussed was getting rid of nuclear weapons as had been urged by the Council. In the end, it was decided to wait. There were two more US pushes for disclosure between then and 2017 New York Times article. One during the Clinton administration and another during the transition between the Obama and first Trump presidency. Now, for the part that put a clock on all of the stuff you've been hearing about 2027, etc. About 3 years ago, a species that is hostile to the Council found out about the Earth Project. They are not part of the collective. They resent in the way the Council handles in younger civilizations, as they themselves felt victimized by the Council. They also resent the credit the Council gets for successful cases. I have heard them described as the jealous neighbors who would rather break your toys than watch you win. Yes, we sometimes joke about this stuff because, again, it's the only way to stay sane with this everyday knowledge and integrate it into your civilian life on Thanksgiving dinner, Xmas shopping, taking the kids to soccer practice, etc. Just as an aside, ever consider how two of the biggest holidays of the year involve gluttony, Thanksgiving, and overconsumption, Black Friday? When you have the knowledge many have within this program, stuff that isn't taken for granted seems really weird and symptoms of the now forced scarcity of our current system. Anyway, back to the aliens. The hostile group I mentioned decided to spoil the experiment. This species is ahead of us technologically, but far behind the Council, though they also inhabit a relative nearby star cosmologically speaking. Their travel is slower, less elegant, and has to take place in stages. Think of it as a space island hopping, which is why their lead time is so long. You probably want to know what they look like. Physically, based on the description we saw, they are about 5 feet tall, segmented bodies, multiple limbs, basically ant-like in overall form. Nothing subtle or humanoid about them. They launch an expedition toward Earth with the stated goal of making a mess, cause chaos here, damage the experiment, and embarrass the Council by showing they cannot protect their own projects due to internal disagreements. Basically exploiting internal fissures, turning small cracks of understanding in the Council into canyons, those destroying it. The transit time means for us, they are expected to arrive in roughly 2 years from now, the 2027 holiday present no one asked for. So, that news triggered a major debate within the Council. One group said, the rules say non-interference, We watched and record what happens, even if it's ugly, and we had done in the past. As we had done in the past. The other group said we effectively created this situation by tagging and monitoring this world. We have a moral obligation not to just watch a civilization we have been studying get smashed by someone else's grudge. If the council showed up in force, it would not be much of a fight. Their technology relative to the ant species is like modern carrier group versus skilled archers on sailboat. The whole thing would be over quickly, and it would also completely blow the point of letting a young species find its own way. It would also be a tremendous blow to the human ego, which the council is well aware of. So they arrived at a compromise. No direct council fleets defending Earth, no obvious intervention. Instead, they will quietly alarm us. What they chose to give us are things they roughly call Scalar-phase weapons. Our vocabulary is not great here. They are not just high power lasers, right? So they interact with fields we do not fully understand or really have names for yet. Shift phases dump huge amounts of energy from the vacuum into very specific volumes of space-time without a conventional bright beam or explosion. Compared to our current direct energy weapons, they are an enormous leap. As someone who spent years working with lasers and optic systems, I can tell you they sit so far off our current tech tree that if you saw these damage assessments from a pulse without context, you would think they were misprints. But compared to council weapons, they are Nerf guns, training wheels per se. Anyway, the decision set off another big argument, both among them and among us. The obvious concern was simple. Once the external threat is gone, what stops us from turning these things on each other the same way we took nuclear power and turned it into thousands of warheads aimed at our own cities? On the US side, there were people saying exactly that, and some members of the council argued that if we on Earth roll out a Scalar system across arsenals, the first real test after the bugs are gone will likely be some crisis where two human governments start lighting each other up with technology that we do not fully understand. The counter-argument, which won, was the species-level survival test to come first. And if humanity gets wiped out by someone else's pity for it, I guess, then the entire debate is academic. Also, if humans fight this off themselves instead of watching the council show up and save the day, they will meet the wider community as people who actually did something, not as rescued primitives. Human ego intact. And the kill switch, if you will, has been built into the tech to disable it after the conflict, which the council sees us winning. If we then decide to use these weapons against each other, they'll simply be disabled until we humans have learned enough to disable the kill switch, which could be thousands of years from now for all I know. So against a lot of internal resistance, the council had been quietly providing Scalar-phase systems to several blocks, not just the US. The list I saw included the United States, China, the European Union through specific channels, Russia and Brazil. Those systems are being integrated into space platforms, aircraft and undersea assets. Testing is happening in remote places and high altitudes, often disguised as other things. Most of the people physically working on it, I think it is an advanced homegrown black program. Only a very small circle in each capital sees the full context. I got to see pieces of that picture shortly before I was pushed into retirement, which is a polite way of saying I stopped being convenient. That is as specific as I'm willing to get. So there's one more reason I'm writing this now, because after pondering it for a long time, and it is more personal than the 2-year clock. A friend of mine, someone I work closely with inside the program, another EO specialist, had been talking quietly years ago about going to Congress. Not with everything, they were not suicidal. No, just enough to force a real closed-door hearing in the Senate. Get the true nature of certain SAPs acknowledged on paper, make it harder to bury the whole subject under jokes and career threats. Over a year ago, I got word that they died. The official explanation has been vague and unsatisfying. Medical complications on a trip to a black site in the Indian Ocean. Those medical complications do not match what I know about their health. Then it became an accident at home, with no details anyone will put in writing. People who would normally be candid went very quiet very fast. Maybe it was just bad luck. People do die suddenly. But given the threats which are known about within certain IC sectors, when one is associated with this subject. I don't know for sure. What I do know is that the last long conversation I had with them was about whether it was worth trying to talk to certain congressional staffers for a certain senator. After hearing recent news confirming publicly much of what I know to be true privately, I stopped telling myself I would wait and see how things played out. Life is short. So here we are. Some stranger on the internet telling you an unbelievable story you are free not to believe. With roughly 2 years on the clock and the current rate of leaks and whistleblowers and half disclosure, it is very unlikely they keep all of this under wraps until the first time something openly, not from here, appears in our sky, our orbit. At some point before that happens, at least one major government, maybe more, is going to go public in a controlled way. My guess would be China or the US, but it could be one of the others on that Scalar weapon list. You will likely get a very carefully worded announcement about unidentified aerial phenomena, about contact with non-human intelligence, about new defense technologies, and unprecedented international cooperation. It will be designed to manage panic and control the story. What you probably will not hear in the first round of briefing is the part about the Erids, the economic implications of their society existence, the billion other habitable planets, the undersea infrastructures that has been here longer than we have had bones. You will not see anyone step up to a podium and say, oh, by the way, there's a branch of humanity that grew up without the idea of money and scarcity 10,000 years ago and advanced 5 millennia past us. That is why I am dumping this year. Where people can ignore it, laugh at it, or save it and see how it ages. Like I said, do not have to believe me. I'm not here to sell a book, go on a podcast, be on TV, or do UFO lectures. Treat this as fiction if that makes you more comfortable. What I'm really trying to do is to get you think past the kiddie pool questions. Are UFOs real? Are the NHI good or evil? It's not the interesting part. The far more interesting questions are what happens to this planet once everyone knows we are being watched, that we have cousins around another star, that some of the basic assumptions we built our society around were just one option, not a fundamental law of nature. If in a year or two you start hearing official talks about our cousins among the stars or civilizations far older than ours and new non-kinetic systems and shared planetary defense, remember this post and see how well it fits. Look, the bugs are coming either way. The council is not going to save us directly. They already handed out the tools and they are watching to see what we do with them. The part that is still up to us is what kind of world we build if we get through it. Will we all go back to work and beat each other over the head with really advanced sticks, or do we achieve a more enlightened potential? That is all I have. Ria. Well, that was one hell of a read for me. As I said, I'm German, so not native English speaking. It was quite hard sometimes to really get what he's talking about. I also felt like he was doing quite some mistakes, so you can correct me though if I am wrong. So yeah, it's actually a very, very long text with a lot of details that are not too important for my taste at some point. But anyways, they're interesting. So probably you also need some time, first of all, to kind of like digest everything. So I did summarize the thing a little bit. And I mean, he's basically claiming to be a former US intelligence electro-optics specialist who worked on classified anomalous aerospace undersea programs. You can basically say that, right? And like he also claims that Earth has been monitored for 2 billion years by the Council, a collective of ancient post-biological interdimensional civilizations that runs long-term surveys of life-bearing planets. And I mean, about the claim that he was working at those programs, of course, we don't have any proof, nothing. That is just slightly giving us the chance to see either that is real or not. So we just have to, basically follow our guts, follow our gut feeling and seeing what feels right, what adds up. As he said, probably just future proofs past, so we can see if he was wrong, if he was right about certain things, if they do happen in the future, and we actually see, oh wow, that guy was actually talking about that stuff back then in the days. But of course, all those things like the council, right, is a thing that we do hear a lot, like this Galactic Federation thing going on, and that Earth, of course, is some kind of experiment. Some people call it the planet, like the prison planet, right? we get locked up here because we did something bad in our past lives, stuff like that. So there are a whole lot of concept about what Earth actually is. And yeah, it could be. I mean, for me at the moment, this is just another one of these people that claim to be some kind of whistleblower, man, because there are way too many lunatics out there, as we witnessed with James, right, recently. So I guess we're all a bit damaged by that. No, but they say their infrastructure is mostly automated ocean floor based, self-replicating, and has been here longer than land animals. This is actually a very interesting part, I feel like, because we do have senators like Mr. Bichette that was actually also talking about deep ocean alien bases that are here. So this is very, very interesting. He's talking about that as well, and this is not the only time. Also, Jesse Michaels had a guy actually in an interview of a captain of a boat basically finding this anomaly underwater, and where they were scanning things, and it has this breathing motion going on, and it's crazy, like a lot of EMP style symptoms happening. Technology, there's disabled kind of not working, having a lot of errors as soon as they swim over the thing with their boat. So this whole ocean thing and underground or underwater bases is not a new thing, and it's actually also being more pushed into the public eye, right? So that's very, very interesting. And also that he says that most UAPs are just routine maintenance monitoring craft using extremely mature technology. I mean, it could make sense, right? We do have a lot of drone sightings that we should probably know of. So a lot of drones, a lot of things we do see flying around. And yeah, I mean, they're not doing anything, right? They're just flying around, maybe having a weird pattern of flying, which we are not used to see, basically. But also that could make sense. And I mean, it's making more sense in terms of it's getting more. I mean, those drone sightings are crazy right now. So also combining the fact that he talks about disclosure ramping up and coming closer and closer and closer, I mean, it could make sense that they're watching more, right? And having more of their craft flying around. Yeah. And now we're coming to the human experiment, the real bombshell. 10,000 years ago, 65,000 humans were taken to planet around 82 Eridani. And that he says the Erids were placed in a post-scarcity environment. Giant replicator-like symptoms. Eliminate hunger, homelessness, money, resource, wars. Yeah. And that the result of that was that the same species, same starting point, but 5,000 years more technologically advanced than Earth humans today. And also that many Nordic or human-looking aliens in contact abduction lore are actually these Erids' descendants visiting Earth. Yeah, that's a crazy theory. I mean, it can be, right? We don't know anything. So it is a possibility, and I do think about that every now and then. What would be if we don't have to work for money to pay our bills, man? Just to like get all the, like we are living in such a material world that is very, very sad in a way. And I mean, we are putting so much energy just to get material things, which are not making us very, very happy. I do think so. So we are looking for other ways inside of us that are making us happy and give us fulfillment in our life. And I can very much imagine that if you have a society where money and all the materialistic basic needs are not a thing, you probably are very advanced, because you can just put your energy into the important existential things and not into just basically fighting against each other, right? So that would be definitely an experiment that would be interesting to look at, right? And also the cover-up thing for 80 plus years in the 1940s, 50s, that the leadership or US leadership realized the era society is living proof that past scarcity, space communism, and dramatically accelerates progress. Yeah, and that this was seen as an existential ideologically threat during the Cold War, more dangerous to reveal than the alien presence itself. Could be. I mean, I feel like that's basically, something that is, I don't know, man. The most people wouldn't even get what you are talking about if you're talking about something like this. So, I mean, the whole alien itself thing would be a bombshell. Not even thinking about like not having materialistic needs and stuff. I mean, those times back then, was very different. Very, very different. Even though a lot of things were happening back then that I do think we do have a very, very wrong picture of what people knew back then. Like we think kind of we know a lot, like generally speaking. Of course, we're just starting to see what is actually out there, right? But you know what I mean? Like we always think of, yeah, back then we did not have any internet. We had no technology, not really. So we had no phones, or everybody was just like in the small social circles. So we couldn't even connect like we're doing now and doing podcasts and interviews and Reddit threads and YouTube and whatever. But I do think if we look at people like Tesla and, you know, Victor Schauberger, stuff like that, there are a lot of people that definitely had a different way of understanding technology than we are doing now. And we probably we knew more than we think we knew, you know? Yeah. And that also he's claiming that these crash retrievals, right? They were mostly deliberate gifts or tests, not accidents, to see how humanity handles advanced technology. I mean, it would make sense, right? To just like slowly dropping things and just see like, yeah, man, I mean, maybe they go nuts. Maybe they just use it to like, yeah, be more advanced, or like, how do you say, to just have the power, right? Like if you have this advanced technology, let's see how they're dealing with that. And I mean, we see how they're dealing. A lot of black projects going on. I mean, at least for now, we did not blow each other up. At least not everything. In some areas we do, which is very sad. So I would be very happy about if war would just stop, man. That's so annoying, man. Yeah, give me 1 sec. Oh yeah, and also that there's this insectoid ant-like looking species that discovered us like 3 years ago, and yeah, it's kind of coming here to basically disrupt this whole experiment. And that the council though is not very much intervening the situation, but they're rather like giving us these Scalar laser type weapons so we can kind of defend against them. And as soon as the danger is gone, those weapons have this kill switch, so we can't use them anymore. I don't know, man. That sounds very... I mean, you know I don't know anything, so it can be, man. But I don't know. My gut feeling tells me we'll see. We'll see. I'm not having like a clear answer to that thing. It's very abstract, and it is a possibility, as everything. Everything is possible. And yeah, as he said, why he's speaking now is basically that a close colleague of him was planning to approach Congress that died under suspicious circumstances, and that those recent public disclosures, documentaries, leaks have already confirmed pieces so full secrecy is collapsing anyways, and that might be the perfect timing to speak up is now. But yeah, in the end, it's not just about aliens, right? It would be, if that's true, it would be about a lot of things that I mentioned before. So yeah, man, do with that what you want. I'm gonna take it as an entertaining thing for now, and I guess we will find out in the coming years if there's anything to that or not. And yeah, man, if you enjoyed that video, definitely leave a comment below, leave a like, click the subscribe button for more videos like those. I very much appreciate your time, and if you listened, thank you so much. That was a long time. Hope you have a beautiful time with your loved ones, and see you in the next video. I'm out of here.